Welcome, everybody, back to another episode of Woven Wings Live, where we bring you wisdom and tools for vibrant living. I'm Gabe Crane, and I'm joined by my co-host, as always, Rahul Didwania. And if you enjoy listening to us, please share this podcast with a friend. You can leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts, which we really appreciate. You can also join our newsletter, which is linked in the show description, to follow along the journey. And Rahul, this week, it's just you and I together. We got a shorter episode for you guys today as we are wrapping up 2023, which is just, as you said before the show, Rahul, is just surreal that we are here. Today is our opportunity to review and look back and just think about what we learned. And so before we go any further, just bring you in, man, I want to just say thank you so much. It's so fun to do this project with you, to get to work on it with you. Kind of wild, man, that we started out in a professional coaching relationship, and one thing's led to another, and now we've done 2 full seasons of this world-changing podcast. So thanks for being here, man, with me every step of the journey. And yeah, how you doing? How you feeling about our reflection time today?
Well, first off, right back at you. It's crazy to think that we started this project 2 years ago. And first I'm still remembering doing that first episode, and we're like, hey, let's just try it, see how it feels. And maybe we'll do something with it. Maybe we won't. And like you said, here we are 2 seasons in. And I think I mentioned to you a couple of days ago, I was like, there was a point where I knew every single episode, when we recorded it, who the guest was, how long the episode was. And now it's at a point where I don't, because we have that much more content and we've had the privilege to meet and interact with that many more people. And yeah, like you said, it feels surreal. I don't want to get caught navel gazing here, but I think there is a tinge of there's certainly gratitude for, but also a little bit of satisfaction that we've stayed committed, and I think there are periods where maybe it feels more exciting, periods where it feels more like a extra thing on our already full plates. And, whatever it is, it's just been such a great thing to come back to. And I'm excited to carve out some of this time to look back on this year, think about all the great moments we've had, and just tie a little bit of a bow, on this last episode of 2023.
Yeah, totally. And I think for folks who are listening, one of the ways I want to frame this is an opportunity, first of all, just to get reintroduced to the catalog of awesome conversations and wisdom and insight that has been shared by really an amazing roster of guests we've had over this past year. And so I really want to encourage folks to go back and listen to some of these awesome pieces that are out there. There's a lot of really helpful material there. And then in the bigger sense, this is the end of the year, right? And it is a time for all of us to be doing a review. And so as you're listening in, I want to invite you into that too, just the process of thinking back and reflecting on what this year has been like for you. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of opportunities to do this as we go in towards the holidays and the new year. But this is something that's really not to be overlooked. We're often so busy. I think you just alluded to that, Rahul, of sometimes we're just being around and we lose track of what's actually taking place. And then we don't actually take the time to integrate and digest all the stuff that's right around us. My Qigong teacher, Ren Shui teacher, Yuansa, always talks about this at the end of every retreat. He takes a session at the end of the program, and it's a time to review. It's a time to look back at what happened during this retreat? What happened to you during this period? And it's really something he encourages it. And I've heard lots of very intelligent people encourage folks, for us all, to do that at the end of a day. Review what happened today. How was it? Was this a good day? Was it a bad day? What happened for me? How did I behave? How did I perform? And finding times to do that at the end of a week or the end of a month. And so we're going to talk about a few different conversations and things that have happened for this show over the past year. But I think that's a real context to be thinking about it as you're listening to at home. How does this apply for you in your own life as well?
It's reminding me of our episode on reflection, right? Where I think it was in season 1, where we're reflecting on this project and then talking about the importance of reflection and just piggybacking off what you were saying, I know I've tried to integrate a 5 minute check in with myself at the end of each that kind of work day more than full on day. And just to reflect on, did I do my best to live my values, to be myself, to find a sense of adventure in the day, to learn, to have deep relationships. And it's really helpful, just to quickly check in and be like, hey, that moment was good. That moment could have been a little bit different. And excited to do that live right now for this year or for this project in particular. And yeah, I'm curious, Gabe, any particular place you want to start with that? Or should we go down the list of our episodes, or, what's speaking to you?
Yeah, just starting out looking at just the wide range of folks that we've had on the show this year, and going back to the very beginning. We started this year out with a bang. We had Bill Richards, a really venerated, amazing psychologist who's really at the forefront. He's a pioneer in the realm of psychedelic research. He came on and started talking with us about the undifferentiated realm, the world beyond what we've just been describing, our day-to-day stress, our worries, our concerns, and this other place that his research has taken his clients to, and taken himself to, of this world of love, of non-dual reality, essential reality. And I just feel like, when I look over this list of who else we talked to then, Roman Hannis with the Paititi Institute talking about the same thing, and Matt Siegel talking about death, and really how so much of our world, our busyness is based in a fear of that ending, that supposed ending. And just everywhere that it's kind of unfolded from there, I just feel like we've been talking about some deep and important things, really kind of the most essential things from the get-go this year. And then so many different dimensions of it as it's unfolded. So I don't know, I see that when I look back on these episodes. I also see, like, as we've gone on in the year, we've kind of moved into some certain areas. We got to do a couple episodes dealing with men's issues, which I thought was really interesting and rich to get to do with you and I together, and just kind of go more deeply into some of these different specific places. We got to explore resonance as a concept, that mini series over the summer. And then we got to have I think we kind of ended the year getting into some really interesting spaces around decision making and making choices, and where do we make choices from. And I know personally in my life that coincided with kind of taking the plunge around certain decisions, or getting ready to launch into the next steps of things. And so one point I would highlight for our show is that most viewers or listeners don't know at this point, is we started a YouTube channel to start putting our content of all these awesome episodes out for people to be able to watch on YouTube. There's also highlight reel videos there. And so we kind of like discussed that for a long time. As you said, we've got different things going on. Our motivations for this project are multiple. And so kind of held off on that. And then Nell McShane Wolfhart came on and talked to us about the art of decision making. And it was kind of time to take the plunge. So kind of see, we were very zoomed out and talking about some deep, really core philosophical stuff. And then the conversation has wound its way into more stuff we all experience in the day-to-day and in this world, around identities, making choices, deciding where our orientations are, and moving from there. And so I don't know, that's a bit of what I see. I'm curious what it sparks for you, and what comes up as you reflect on this roster of episodes that we've done.
One question I get a lot, friends in particular who scan the episode list or are listeners of the podcast, is how do you decide what you're going to do, and how do you find your guests? And I think it's, as I was scanning the list for this season, I was again just appreciating the diversity you just alluded to, right? We've gone into some more intellectual realms, some potentially mystical realms, some more practical realms. We've had different spiritual traditions. I was looking at the episode People and Plants, right? And the idea of connecting with our fellow living beings and viewing plants as part of our environments, and was just remembering that. We had the episode around money and relationship with money. And so in looking at this diversity, I was thinking about people asking that question, and also thinking about a conversation you and I have been having, Gabe, right? Which is, how much do we want to keep going broad and trying all sorts of different things, which is one answer to that question. How do we find guests? We just find them, people that are in our orbit, people that we're interested in. In the case of someone like Nell, who you mentioned, we just messaged her off of Google. But that's she's more of the exception, I think, right? But primarily it's following our interests, following our network, being referred to people. And that's led us right to this great breadth of content, not just this year, but even last year, across so many different, ways of thinking, different modalities, different, whether it's science or ancient tradition or more anecdotal versus rigorous or academic versus experience based. I think it's been really great, right, to examine all these different stories. Curious to see how we carry forward next year. Both you and I have felt a bit of a draw to try to go deeper on any given topic and see what that does. I think that was a fun experiment with the Resonance series, doing 3 episodes on one theme and exploring it from a few different angles. Curious to see what that looks like for us if we continue down that road and try to go deeper on certain topics.
What's interesting is that when you're making a show like this, and there's how many untold number of podcasts out in the world amidst other content, and we're really trying to create something that is genuinely meaningful and that helps people connect with a deeper part of themselves. And at the same time, it's really easy amidst that landscape and context when you have a schedule where it's like, okay, you're going to make a new episode every 2 weeks. You need to find a guest. There's all these logistics that go into that. It's easy to kind of find yourself with like empty words, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
just talking for talking's sake. And the irony is that a lot of the areas that we focus on or talking about is the antithesis of that. It's really
Yeah.
like trying to have the most meaningful conversations you could possibly have. And so I think that that's a tension. And I think that that's something that other guests, podcast makers, content makers face. And all of us face as you're listening. It's like we want to consume something, we want to be entertained. But in that entertainment, are we avoiding something? Perhaps, or are we kind of filling our time to get away in a certain sense from the fundamental core things in life, the present moment, being here in a more authentic and real way? And even just all those words that I just said, they're just like so easy to repeat until they kind of start to lose their meaning. So I have a couple thoughts on it. It's just that on the one hand, by the nature of how the show is set up and life is set up, I think we're going to probably keep talking to a wide range of people. But at the same time, I do hope that our conversation keeps going deeper, taking people into, at least from my vantage point, what I see as the most important stuff, which is what I just mentioned, around really awakening to our true identities in the present moment, beyond the chatter of the mind, beyond the ego and what we hope to accomplish and attain. John, in our last episode of the Diamond Approach, was speaking to that, the power of really what takes place in the present moment, and how most of life's gifts are present there. And there's a lot of different systems and pathways into that, but we all need constant reminder of that. It's a constant practice to bring ourselves deeper into that. And so I don't know, we'll make a intro to our season 3 as we're opening things up for the new year in 2024. But that's certainly something I hope to see as we kind of go forward, is just this more dropping deep, like cutting past some of the niceties and empty words into the most meaningful conversations we could have.
Yeah, and actually one of the things that I've always appreciated about the project, that same like, hey, we got to do something every couple of weeks, pressure, so to speak, or commitment has, for me, served the purpose of basically forcing me to have this kind of conversation at least once every 2 weeks. That there have been periods throughout the year where I feel like I'll have stretches where I'm just like so in the weeds, and then having one of these conversations about anything, right? I mean, you mentioned John's episode is like truly talking about and even experiencing this idea of being present. Resonance series is all about that. But even the episode with like Sharik, right? And talking about community and connecting with people regardless of background, and knocking on your neighbor's door and just showing up with a pie. And, those are all also reminders. Or Ralph in the episode around plants, right? Is like, can you name 5 plants on your block? Have you paused to ever notice them? Those are also to me just like great vehicles for that very reminder, right? That you're talking about, that reminder to slow down, to be present, to allow that state change right within ourselves, where we view the things around us with joy, with openness, with equanimity, with connection, as opposed to viewing it from the weeds, right? Where everything feels daunting and heavy and just covered and altogether inapproachable. And so that's just another piece I'm reminded of. And I think carrying that into each and every one of our episodes, it's just such a good reminder. I mean, the other one that's coming to mind is like the episode with Mike Trugman around money. It was also a reminder that, hey, money as something that can often be a daily source of stress can also be, in another world or alternatively, a daily source or medium through which to express our values, right? And it's like these small shifts, which can feel just like words, right? When we're talking about it quickly, are actually like really, really powerful reminders, right? Of shifts in mindset and shifts in practice that if we do just a few of them, right? If we can consistently practice even a handful of them, it's very enriching, right, to life. And I've really felt that every time we come off of one of these conversations. So just another few thoughts there.
Yeah, I love what you just said in a number of ways. And one of the things I think it really highlights is really something that's been a goal of this show from the get-go. Woven Wings Live. This show is about weaving. It's about kind of the interlocking nature of so many of those dimensions you just named, which come through in the different episodes that we've done. It's like the ecology that Ralph Steven talked about on his episode, the plants, and then how that interacts with civic change and community building. And all of that has some root in what we often call the spiritual practice on this show, or is popular in vogue these days. We talk about it as mindfulness. There's some spark that comes from a kind of shift in our attitude in coming into that present moment a little bit more. But then the way that actually plays out in life is not just sitting on a meditation cushion or being in a house of worship or working within whatever specific field that we're in on a very narrow project. There is this kind of dialogue and interaction process that's happening with us all the time. We go out, we go about our day. If we're not kind of conscious of it, maybe we don't think much of it. But if we really kind of take the interactions that we're kind of talking about within this show and we apply them into what happens when we are in our house with our family members, on the phone, on Zoom with people interacting with life, and then we step out of our house and we continue that interaction and go about our work. I mean, this is really, it's hard to look at us. It's taking us like 15, 20 minutes to be able to articulate this because it's like a broad concept, right? But this is really how the change in the world takes place. This is how kind of culture takes shape around something that is heart-based, heartwarming, nourishing to life. And so I think you've kind of changed my mind too, because it's like, okay, next year I hope that we will go deeper and focus more on some things. But I don't know. On the flip side, I feel like what we originally intended to do from the
Yeah.
get-go,
Yeah.
and I would never want that to change, because I think that interaction and that diversity is so essential to what we've kind of conceived this project as, and the way that we kind of look out at the world as, the value of any of the practices we discuss on the show.
Yeah, and there's always that idea, you've mentioned the relational aspect of everything, and there's that idea, right, of like you are the average of, your 5 closest friends, or something to the effect of like, the inputs and the constant inputs in particular really influence who you become and what you rise to or fall to, right? And that's actually where having such a wide breadth of conversations, and in particular with just such great people. I'm looking at a couple other people that we didn't highlight that also really left a mark for me, right? There was the holistic health paradigm, our conversation with Jackie Blunt, and just like thinking about ourselves and our wellness and our wholeness, in a more holistic way than how we might typically think about it. There's the like social learning organism, which really speaks to being woven, right? And it's like, how do we influence a system and be a part of a system where everyone is committed to learning, both individually and collectively? And everything you said, right, is a reminder of how this project hopefully is a part of that goal, and that movement. And then just thinking individually, right? Like, hey, if we can connect with all of these ideas, I'm remembering what Nivedita said, right, around creating your own reality and law of attraction, and what happens when we carry a certain kind of energy into our day to days, into our world, and weave with others. And what we're bringing is a certain type of positivity and resonance and elevation, and the effect that that has on other people, and the effect that it has on our lives, when it comes back around, and just the way we relate with the different challenges that we might run into day to day. And it's just like, I'm just looking at all these things and remembering all the different nuggets, really, I would say, like, seeped in to the way that I try to approach life now. And hopefully that's true for our listeners as well.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Nivedita, and it made me think of the connection between her episode and Beth Fisher Yoshida's episode
Yeah.
around owning and changing your story. Yeah, I mean, we've been up to that here for ourselves, right? I mean, through the podcast, we've been owning and changing our own story in life. Who are we in the world? What do we do? What do we spend our time doing? And what sort of contribution do we make into the world? And, it's nice to reflect on some of the other elements you mentioned. But one thought that just came to me about all of this is reminded me of a Tibetan Rinpoche. I'm not super involved with Tibetan Buddhism, but I got connected with this one teacher, Dzongzar Khyentse Rinpoche, DKR, and he is the head of a number of lineages. I think one of them is called the Rimé lineage, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing anything. But part of what struck me about DKR, this guy, is this Rinpoche, is that, or this particular lineage, is specifically focused on building dialogue between all the other lineages within Tibetan Buddhism. So
Mm,
that's like specifically what they see themselves as doing. Is it's very important that the different strands that are part of this tradition be in effective conversation. And when we look at this guy as an individual, he's a venerated, Tibetan Rinpoche who's therefore within that system, like this enlightened being who's reincarnated and all this stuff. He's also a filmmaker and like loves soccer and is an artist. And that diversity has always really struck me about him in particular. Just that all these pieces really do intersect, and what we're really looking for is kind of what we talk about in our tagline, right? Wisdom and tools for vibrant living. This sense of vibrancy that comes about when we can really tap into the goodness in life and let it flow within ourselves and flow out of ourselves, between us as people in the natural world and beyond. Yeah, here's to that. I'm
yeah,
grateful that we're getting to do our little share of that.
I agree. I agree. And I know we talk about this podcast as a spiritual practice all the time. And it's just the nature of it, right? As we were talking about, is this idea of dialogue, and through dialogue, connecting with ideas, but also experiencing what the ideas are about. And the way you were just describing it was reminding me of John, right? Very recently talking about radiance and how we have the like ingredients for radiance within us. And it's just a matter of connecting with it and allowing it to come out, and dissolving away or removing, the things getting in the way. And just in this moment, I'm feeling happy to like continue to have this as a place to do that. And hopefully a place that allows other people, no matter what they're doing while listening to this show, if there's a moment while they're working out or while they're commuting or on a walk or whatever it is that they can connect with themselves and something opens up, that's the greatest gift. And just feel lucky to have a chance to create that moment for others just as much as for ourselves.
One person that it would be so fun to have on this show, who we won't get to because they've passed away, is the philosopher Martin Buber. And Martin Buber is early 20th century Jewish philosopher. He talked about this idea of the I thou relationship, or the I you relationship, versus the I it relationship. And, it just brings me back to that, what we were describing at the beginning, our busy lives and getting into the weeds of life. And within that context, they lose their radiance, right? They become more transactional, it kind of interactions. I've got to do this, I've got to do that. And I just feel through this process, and similar ones that folks like yourselves listening at home are engaging in, we kind of reanimate the world with that love, with that radiance, that vibrancy, that sense of like, wow, like you're you're part of life. You're this other living being that I'm getting to spend time with and interact with. And so that's a big part of what we're up to. I also just wanted to highlight, so we mentioned at the start or earlier that we started a YouTube channel, that this project continues to grow. You can find highlight episodes of podcasts there. If you want to share our work with anyone and maybe they're not ready for an hour or 75-minute episode, you could shoot them 10-15 minutes of some of the awesome insights our guests are sharing. And so that's one thing. And then another thing I just wanted to celebrate as far as just progress, Rahul, is well, first of all, we used to not even record the video of our episodes because
Yeah.
I mean, there were different reasons, but one main reason I would say is because we were shy to do that. And I think that we've kind of gotten over that and started to share that. So I want to kind of celebrate that. And then we were talking about this the other day, but this show continues to grow. It has more of a footprint in the world. And we have folks that are reaching out to us these days wanting to come on our show. So we're finding people through our network, through word of mouth, but also people are starting to find us more and more. And so that's really exciting as well. And so if you are listening, if you think there's someone in your world that would be a good fit on our show, feel free to let them know about us and send them our way as well. I just want to kind of recognize those things as like, since we almost 2 years ago now had first episode about miracles, and we had my friend Cheyenne Ward on the show, this project has been steadily growing and continuing to grow. So I just want to kind of acknowledge that. And then lastly, I just really we've shouted out a lot of folks that were on our show this past year, but I just want to say to all of our guests, thank you so much for taking the time to share your wisdom with us, to spend time with us and out of your own busy lives to make this a priority. It's just been such a pleasure learning from all of you. And it's great to be connected with you all, and I hope we'll stay connected in the year to come. Cool, man. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add, or anything personal as you're kind of thinking about the end of your year and wrapping up?
No. Yeah, I'm feeling complete around this right now.
For folks listening, thank you so much for tuning in with us and joining us on the journey this year. Again, you can find our show wherever you listen to podcasts. We really appreciate it if you share us with your friends, if you leave us a review, and you can join our newsletter. And of course, check out our new YouTube channel where you can see all sorts of different things going on with Woven Wings Live. So on that note, we're wishing you just a wonderful end to your year. May it be a beautiful time for you with family and friends and connections with yourself, deeper movements of life. And we will see you in the new year in 2024, which promises to be a rockin' year. So thanks so much
Woohoo!
for tuning in with us, and we will catch you out there. Bye-bye.